Okay, the next step is to sand it smooth, and that'll actually do the final shaping too. As I said, I left the wood just a little bit proud of the bushings, and by the time I'm done sanding, they'll be almost level with the bushings. I start usually my sanding depending on the wood. This actually came out pretty smooth with just the tools, so I'll start it at 150 grit. Just briefly to smooth out and remove any tool marks that still might be in there. And then I'll work my way all the way up through about 800 grit, maybe even 1,000, depending on how it's smoothing out as I get up there. This particular pen I'll be buffing out for the final finish, so I don't need to sand quite as fine as if I were using some other finish like a friction polish or something like that. So basically, to sand, I cut little pieces of sandpaper. I buy it in 1-inch rolls, and I cut like a 3 or 4 inch piece, and then turn the lathe on. I put the lathe on the slowest speed because you don't want to overheat the wood with the friction from the sanding. You don't really have to push real hard, you just kind of hold it up against there. See the sawdust sticks to the paper. Often I'll leave the vacuum on, and it'll suck that all up. Of course, with the vacuum on, if you happen to let go of the sandpaper's gone, goes up the vacuum. And that's really about all you need. At the end of circular sanding, I like to take and do a final rub going with the grain of the wood, just to help smooth out those scratch marks from the sandpaper going against the grain. Then I will dust off with my brush the sawdust that's left over from that grit, and if there's any little particles of grit, so they don't transfer into the next grit. And then it's just work my way up through the grits. Okay, the sanding is all done. I sanded it up through all the grits all the way up to 1200. And there's no point in going any further than that because, like I said, I will be buffing this finish out. And the first grit on the buffer is about 1200, so if I go any finer with the sandpaper, I'll just be taking a step backwards with the buffer. But as you can see, it's very, very smooth, and it's almost starting to have a shine of its own. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a tung oil finish on it to absorb into the wood. That'll do two things. It'll help bring the grain out and make the wood look a little nicer, and then also it gives a good base for the buffing process. The drawback to it is it will have to sit overnight to dry, so we won't be able to buff it out and finish the pen until tomorrow. What I'll do is I'll soak this little rag in the tung oil, put it on the wood, let it soak in a bit, and then after maybe 5 minutes I'll turn the lathe on and wipe it off with a clean rag. Okay, well, we let it sit overnight, and the tung oil is dry, and it's quite smooth, and it even has a bit of a shine already. The buffing process that we're going to use will bring that shine out and make it really pop and look good. The first wheel uses a brown Tripoli compound, which is the abrasive, but it's a very fine abrasive, equivalent to approximately 1200 grit sandpaper, but it might be even a little finer than that. And that will remove any sanding scratches or imperfections in the finish. The second one is another wheel that has a white diamond compound on it, and that's even finer yet, and that will remove anything that this thing left behind. And then at that point the finish is pretty well done. But the third wheel I put on has a carnauba wax that just adds a protective coating and really brings out the shine. So we'll start doing that, and it's a pretty quick process. So it'll go. This probably takes longer to change the wheels than it does to do the actual buffing. But I'll turn the machine on and put the compound on, and we'll start. We add a pretty good amount of carnauba wax. My wheels are fairly new, so you might see some lint come flying off them from time to time. That's pretty common with a new wheel. But you just put it on the wheel and rotate it around, move it up and down. Now we get the white diamond compound out. We don't need quite as much compound with the white diamond as we do with the Tripoli. But I'll put a little more on than I normally would because, again, the wheels are still fairly new. Now this you don't need to put nearly as much pressure on. The wax wheel is just a very, very soft wheel. It's all made out of flannel, I believe. And we'll add a little bit of carnauba wax. And that should do it. And you can see it's really got a nice shine to it now.